Hello everyone, welcome to this Tacton webinar, launch webinar about configure anything with Tacton CPQ system configuration. My name is Rohdin. I work as a product marketing manager here at Tacton. And with me, I have Andreas Edlund, who is a product manager in Tacton, yes, leading much of our product development within our configurator solutions, especially now focusing on system configuration. So the agenda for today is we're going to introduce with background around product variants and how that is vital in B2B manufacturing. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of engineer to order and configure to order. And then Andreas will take over and talk about how we, our configuration solutions address those problems and those capabilities that we have, including now a new functionality that we call system configuration, which was recently launched this week. Then we'll talk about the results and business value of system configuration. And at the end, there will be a question and answer session. And I encourage you all to add your questions in the chat in your meeting software, and then we will pick them up at the end and answer them one by one. Good. Yes. Let's go. So we talk about product variants, and some companies go for standard and commoditized products. But many of our customers in B2B and manufacturing are working with custom, tailored, individualized product. So this image sort of shows on the x-axis here the number of product variants that you offer in your portfolio as a company. And on the y-axis, we have the volume and the quantity of each of those product variants. So standard products are up to the left, and individualized and tailored custom products are down to the right. So think about a truck manufacturer, for instance. You have a platform, but you can create multiple variants on that platform for different customer needs. And if we think about, if we take a step back in history, how product variants have changed over industrialization. Before industrialization and manual sort of industrial production, each product was actually handcrafted and handmade, which meant that every product variant that was produced was unique. There was only one copy of that because everything was handcrafted. As the industrialization and the production means changed and became more efficient, we went into a more mass production where finally, at the peak of mass production, we had high volumes, high quantity, but we lose that, the product variants. So Henry Ford is cited to have said, you can have any color of my T Ford car as long as it's black. And the driver for this change, of course, is that you lower the production cost and thereby being able to offer your standard products to a larger market share. But since the peak in 1950s, we've seen the reverse trend back towards higher product variants. And that has been driven by new ways of manufacturing. You can customize your mass production, assembly lines, and so forth. And very recently, we have technologies like 3D printing and lot size 1, which actually makes that possible, keeping the production costs down at the same time generating the variety and the variants that you would like to see and that the customers would like to see. And this is sometimes referred to as digital disruption. Through digital means and production means, we can tailor and custom and individualize B2B manufacturing products. And the drivers behind this is really to maximize the product fit, of course, and the value that those products produce. If you can tailor your product according to the customer needs and the use case, then you will have your customers will experience better value and more value for the money. You're also able to differentiate your product versus your competitor's product and thereby have a better sales and pitch and a value proposition. So that means that you can compete on value and the outcome of those products rather than cost. If you think about a commoditized market where basically all your competitors' products are very, very similar, then cost is oftentimes the only sort of differentiating factor that you can play with. But if you are in a customized market and a tailored market, then you can actually compete on value and the outcome. And you also become closer to your customer's business, so you can monetize the customer in different ways since you are sort of integrating your solutions into theirs. So there are different drivers for this development. And one method by which many companies address this is through engineer to order, whereas you hire a number of sales engineers that create manual designs in your quotes and also in your orders. But it's not scalable in that sense. Eventually, you will run into problems with engineer to order. So creating manual and one-off solutions with multiple handovers between your sales engineers and customers and the order fulfillment organization creates errors, both in production, in sales, but also in service. So, and this of course degrades your margin for each project. And that leads to unsustainable sales cost and the cost of acquiring your customers. And more importantly, I think also that your product knowledge, which sits in the heads of your sales engineers, is difficult to share and store in a wide sense, making your company more vulnerable to knowledge loss when those key sales engineers leave your company. And it also hampers innovation and time to volume, of course, because it's difficult to reach the market with new products and new features if there are manual design processes in between you and the customer market. So we are proposing, or we are working, of course, with what we call configure to order process. And this is where we use smart configuration technologies like Tacton's to define millions of valid product variants. So we still have the variety of things, but they're still valid in the sense that they are possible to produce, they're possible to install, and they're possible to service. As well as, of course, that we have a controlled cost of those production. It means also that we can translate customer needs into technical solution, and you don't need to be a product expert or a technical expert to make that. So the interface is easy, is non-technical, and is easy to understand. More importantly, we also allow this configure to order allows us to have a shared product definition across the organization. So both sales, your production, as well as your order fulfillment organizations, they use one source of truth. And that means that you can communicate your product values and your deliveries in a much more consistent ways with higher customer satisfaction rate. And of course, you also have fewer manual handovers because everything in its digital thread is digitalized in that sense. And this all leads to a number of benefits. We maintain the high product variance, we have decreased lead times in sales and order fulfillment, we get the predictable cost of your offerings. We also lower the risk and make your quality control better. And of course, a lot of efficiency results as well. So configure to order is something that we think is a great game changer for many of our customers. But one of the objections that we get from our customers is really, is anything configurable? My products are so complex, it's impossible for a configurator to be able to handle that. Well, we say, think again. Of course, products are different in complexity. If you think about a screw or a shoe, the number of variants in that, or the level of variance, is quite small. Maybe you have a color change, color differentiation, and so forth. But if we move into more complex products, think of a bike. A bike is more variant in the sense that the size of the wheels and the size of the frame needs to fit together to encompass all the different needs that men's bike and the women's bike and the children's bike and the mountain bikes need. So it's more, there are more parts and components in a bike than in a shoe, for instance. But still, it's quite limited in terms of variation because, I mean, we have 2 wheels, we have 2 positions for the wheels, not 4, not 5, unless you're selling tandem bikes, of course, but the variation is quite restricted in that sense. But if you go to a truck, a heavy truck, for instance, there, of course, the functionality is different, but also the number of positions. Think about the wheels again. Maybe there are 6 wheels, but there could be 8 wheels, or maybe 10 wheels even. So that makes, which affects the chassis selection and so forth. So that's a more complex product. But there are even more complex use cases. Think about an HVAC system, which we're going to talk about here today. This kind of products, which we would refer to as systems, they have innumerous. We don't know how many positions. We don't know the spatial layout of those products. So there are even more variety and variance in those. But we will show today that we are able to to configure all of this variance with our sort of smart configuration technologies. So this is a bit of a background of what Andreas is now going to show. So over to you, Andreas.
Oh, thank you. So taking over from Per, I will try to, before going into the latest additions to Tacton CPQ, we'll talk a little bit about where we're coming from, what we have been doing for the last quarter of a century, and to see what we're building upon when introducing the system configuration. So Tacton has for a long time been having this constraint-based product variance approach, where we, instead of having rules pointing that this goes with this and that goes with that, we're instead trying to look at kind of the logical, how things fit together in a more logical way by actually describing our products with features and comparing those features instead of comparing the actual items within a configurable product in the end. And this allows us for lowering the number of constraints or rules that we have in the system, which of course increases the maintenance. But that's not all. It also allows for a separation between the data and the constraints, which means that you can write your rule set and constraints separated from the data. And that gives you more freedom to update and maintain your data without having to put as much effort into maintaining the rules of your product. So in this example on the slide I will show, it's a tire. A tire has specific width and diameter, for example, and those are 2 things that we can interconnect in a truck example with the axis of the truck. They need to kind of fit together. The width of a tire can't be bigger than what the axis can handle, or the around the wheel on the truck. And the way we do it, and has been doing it for a long time, is that we have this constraint-based setup. And a lot of combinations, of course, arise in a truck. If you were allowing the truck to be freely put together, you could probably put together it in billions and billions of ways. But that's not the case in reality. Instead, you have these constraints describing what are actually the valid solutions for a specific truck. And each of these constraints that we add are kind of narrowing down the number of valid solutions in the end. And that is what we see on the screen here. It's an example of the theoretically possible is the whole square of solutions. Every dot is a solution. But when you apply your constraints, for example, you end up with the white area in the middle, which is the actual possible solutions that you can configure and in the end sell to the customers. So this is, as I said, what we have today, what we've been having for a long, long time, and it works perfect, and it can manage a lot of the complexity and the problems we see in the manufacturing markets today. I'm going to show that a little bit as well, because moving forward, we will also look into how these new things that we introduced will build upon what we already have. So in our tool, the Tacton CPQ, we have introduced for quite some time now the product modeling, which is how we model these models in CPQ. And what we do is to try to mimic as far as possible the data setup according to how the product is built up in the PLM systems by the engineers in the CAD systems, and reuse that structure so you don't have different structures in different systems. And we do it by talking about assemblies, which is the configurable product in our system. We do have positions in that assembly that decides what goes where, and we do have the modules, which are the building blocks in the end, where you pick from to build the final product. And what this gives us in terms of maintenance and reusability is that, of course, if you have certain parts or variants, you can reuse the modules in different assemblies within our current solution today. You can even use a configurable assembly within another assembly and thereby combine them into finished products in the end. So the reusability of modules and assembly is essential in our solution when we create configurable products today. So to show where we are and what it is and what the benefits of this are and the constraints are in the end, I'll going to first of all show what our current solution looks like. So for you who have not seen Tacton CPQ, this is our standard platform, and where the setup is that the salespeople work and they go in, create opportunities and solutions, and on the solutions we add what we refer to as products. Mostly it's configurable products, but it can more or less be any product that you want to sell. So I add an air conveyor, which in our case is a configurable product with our constraint-based engine. And one of the benefits that we do get is that we always, out of the box, get a complete solution without having to do anything. As soon as I open this interface, on the right-hand side here, I can see that I have a list of things that are already configured. So I could, if I wanted to, look at this result, finish it, and I would have a finished product that I can put into a quote and give to a customer. So the system really helps and guides me in that regard. Other benefits that you do get is, for example, I can answer questions in any order. Since I always will have a valid solution with the help from the configurator, if I answer a question, I don't have to answer them in first, second, third. I can start with the third question in this case. And when I do it, I kind of lock down. This is a selection of mine. But what also happens now is that we get any conflicting selections that we have, it will highlight to me as a user. So in this case, I selected the F5 microfiber glass. And then when I want to select my motor type, the configurator stops me, or it doesn't actually stop me. It tells me that 3 out of 4 are not compatible. So if I would like to have the 1.7 kilowatt motor in this case, it will help me, guide me by telling, yes, there is an incompatibility in your selection here. And then I can either accept this or reject it. And if I accept it, it will actually change my conveyor filter type, still always providing me with a valid solution in the end. And on the right side, you can see that all the time, the item list or the bill of material is constantly updated with the correct things. So, and then I save this, and I have a configured product, and then you can do a lot of other things that benefits your sales process within CPQ, not going into those today. So how we build this inside administration in Tacton CPQ is that we have these different building blocks. And which are the modules. And a module is typically a container of variants where things that are interchangeable are put into the same bucket. We do have our assemblies, which is where we put our rules. In our case, we looked at the air conveyor. Here I can structure my product or assembly. I can put attributes on the assembly. I can also define the constraints that I talked about, that you can set. Should this be bigger than this? Should everything be equal? Do I need to sum up the weight of the complete assembly not to be higher than a maximum weight that I defined? And the last thing, I can design my view here that I want the end user to look. And the view can be completely different from how the structure looks like. It does not need to follow that technical structure. It can have a different approach that benefits either if it's sales engineering, or whomever is using this tool to configure the things. So that is what we have today and been having for a long time, and it's our powerful configurator. It is our DNA in what we do when we configure. And that will also remain. But now, what we will do and talk about is how can we take this one step further to help our customer to meet the needs that Per talked about, and the need we see today in the market of being even more efficient to sell bigger configurations or more complex configurations. And this is where our newest edition that was released yesterday come into play. It is what we refer to as system configuration. And what is then a system? System is a very kind of broad word in that sense. A system is, in our terminology, can be more or less anything. It can be an HVAC system, as Per described. It can be a power plant. It can be a production line. It can be a playground, honestly. It's a system out of swings and other tools that the kids can use in the playground. So the definition of a system is more or less that there are multiple things that you put together and they can interact with each other. So that is what we define as a system. So technically now, what we're introducing in Tacton CPQ is that we're taking our core capabilities, the constraint-based, the product modeling, and we're building upon it. We're extending it with new capabilities. So it's not a separate thing. It's the same thing, that when you feel that you reach a limit of our product modeling capabilities, you can use the system capabilities to reach even further, to maybe reach new markets, to reach new people within the organization, to sell your thing. And what we do is that we introduce a layer upon the configuration, the constraint-based assemblies, which is a network or a system of nodes that are interconnected, where each node can in itself be either a very complex assembly and configurable product, or it can also be a very simple product, but you want them to be able to sell your complete solution or a complete system. And this network is then managed by saying, what are the relation? What am I as a node? How do I relate to the other nodes in this network? And we are writing, and with our help, our own language, writing rules on this level, which makes the network stay up to date, which helps the user to easily create big and extended solutions. So that is what system configuration is technically now. You take what we have and you add something to it. I'm going to have a demo now and look at what we're actually have done and how it plays out for both the end users and for the administrators in the end. But just to put you in the context of what we have introduced is that a system in Tacton CPQ have a couple of building blocks that are similar to earlier we had modules and assemblies, and we still have those. They will still exist in the system. But now we're also introducing to what we refer to as nodes, connections, and global attributes. And in the system configuration, in the demo now, what we will look at is a production line for producing and filling bottles and packing the bottles and shipping them in the end of the line. And this is one type of system. It's a end-to-end system that is interconnected. What we can say in this is that, for example, what we refer to as nodes in our new system configuration is typically in such a system, all the machines and all the conveyors that goes within the line. And each conveyor or each machine specifically are very complex configurations which will be managed by our constraint-based configurator. All of those nodes are then connected by what we refer to as ports. So a port defines what goes into me, what goes out of me, etc. And between the ports, we also say put connections, which defines how many other nodes can connect to me through this port. The last part of the key things in system configurations are the global attributes. And global attributes are holding information that is essential to every single part or every single node in this system. In this, typically on a bottling line like this, it can be what is the maximum number of bottles we can produce. Of course, that's limited by the slowest machine or slowest conveyor in some cases. It can be, it needs to run in the same voltage, etc. Other factors that play into what we do. So this is what I'm going to have in the demo that I will show. So now, going back to my same solution. So as I said, nothing new. You handle it similar to how we handle configured products today. The end user add products to their solutions the same way. Nothing has changed. When I do go to add product, I have my flexible filling production line, as we referred to. I start configuring it. The first thing that happens now is that we come into a requirement view. And as you can see, here I can enter my requirements, and it's the similar constraint-based approach underneath here. So maybe I say that I want to have 3,000 bottles per hour. I want to sell this in North America. And since this is constraint-based, it immediately tells me which countries are not in North America. So if I try to go and say, well, I want to go in Australia, then it will tell me no, then you need to change to Oceania, because yeah, Australia is not North America. I'll reject that. And I'll actually go for US. I don't need to, but I want to sell in US, so I want to be sure that that's and I want to sell carbonated drinks. So now I put in my requirements for the production bottling line that I'm going to sell. I can, if I want to, specify even more bottle details down below. When I've done this, we have a stepped approach at the top, and I now want to go in and actually configure my production line based on this general requirements. When I go to the production line, and this is something that's a little bit different, the view of a system configuration is very similar to the product modeling view, we will look to the users. They wouldn't notice a big difference when they configure something like this. But one big difference here is I start with nothing. I've chosen, in this case, to start with nothing. I could choose to actually start with having a complete configuration already from the beginning. But now I'm going in, it's a blank, clean slate, more or less, that I enter. So even if I enter my requirements, I at this point have no solution, which is a little bit different from what we've done earlier. But it's a possibility now that sometimes when you sell a system, it might be that, you might not want to sell them completely empty, but it might be that you want to finish your configuration when you're done with 80% of the system, and then you want to save it and continue later, or you want to only sell 80% because 20% is not part of this deal. And that's now possible to have sort of an incomplete system solution, still not possible to have an incomplete machine solution once you add it, but you can choose not to add machines to your production line. What we immediately also notice going in here is that we have this row of buttons. The buttons are actions, and actions is an essential part of if you want to make a good user experience for your end users to easily create systems. In system configuration, we both have standard actions, which come out of the box, but you can also create your own action, and they can be simple, even if they are customized for your, and they can be very complex, which means by a click of a button, an end user can achieve a lot. And in this, now I want to add, so since I have nothing, I want to add a standard line. This might be the normal way to sell. What actually happens now when I press it is that I execute an action, and on the left side, I added a line with some information of the maximum bottles per hour. So this line is 6,000. And what's interesting with this is that I didn't actually only add the line. Underneath, I added already now 7 configured products. So by clicking this button now, I actually made a complete configuration. All of these are valid. And just to show that, on the right-hand side, I have my pricing. I have each of these machines updated with a price, and I also have a complete price for my solution. So now I could go to view results similar to the product modeling model and save and put it in a quote and sell it to a customer. Some other things that are new in system configuration is since we are allowing more flexibility within the configurations, we also put more power into the hands of the administrator to decide when things goes wrong. So what are the limits I want to have? And that we handle by introducing rules or validations, which are rules that constantly apply to the system. So if you do something that breaks a rule, you will get messages. In this case, I can add 2 lines here. And then I can add 3 lines. But then I get information that, you can't go above 3 lines. That's actually too much more. And in this case, it's an information. It could be an error. It could be a warning, depending on the severity of what you want to present. So when doing this, either you can present the information to the user. You can also have resolutions already connected to this, which means that I can, in this case, remove the existing line, or I can honestly, as a user, also go in and directly in the left side menu, for example, remove a line and thereby resolve the conflict that I had in the system. So all this has so far been on the system level, but every one of these machines, I can also now, here we have the air conveyor, which I used as an example in introducing the product modeling. I can go into it and also in the same fashion, configure this. I have my conflict resolution within this. I can accept changes, etc., and thereby configure and customize every single node in this line. I can also delete, and by deleting here, we're actually deleting things from the solution. We're not just hiding them. Thereby, the bottle feeder is gone from my line A, or my line. I can, just as because now I have two lines, it can be hard to separate them. Let's rename them. And why do I want to rename them? Yeah, because it's easier both to separate them. But since I'm now starting to get into a little bit more complex system where I have multiple lines, I might, and if I want to do more things with them, it might be easy to separate them line by line. So another way is that if I have complex system, it might be that I want to look at it in different views. So one thing here is that we look at line by line, but we can also have different views where I see, in this case, I've chosen only to see the bottle feeders and the air conveyors, but then I get all the air conveyors and bottle feeders that exists within my solution. So just to give you an example is that down here, I can add another air conveyor to the solution. By doing this, which is a standard thing, you just add that button into your design view and it adds. But then, of course, it does not know where to put it or in which line to put it. But then I have my other view where I actually can see machine by machine and see that, well, down here it was added. And I can thereby assign it, and I actually had the other one unassigned as well. So I can assign it to a line, go back, and here you can see it's the same. And the reason we can see it's the same at this point is that it has this little warning, which is also built in, that you added something to the network that is not yet configured, hence not giving a complete solution. So I can go in here then and either configure it, but I can also let the system configure it automatically for me. So let's, for an example, now I have my needs, I have my lines, but what if I want to update my needs? I can go back. Let's say it's 2,000 bottles per hour. Then, of course, yeah, in this case, I actually lowered, but what happens is that every single machine does not automatically fulfill the requirements that I have on the lines. And I could have now automatically reconfigured everything in the step changed, but for the sake of this demo, I actually put it in a button where I can now, I have 15 machines, and it's kind of tedious to just walk through them one by one to update the configurations. Then I can easily update all the configuration. And what's actually happening now is that it's applying the configurator on all these different lines. And all the time, just as a reminder, we get the updated bill of material with the updated price. The last thing I want to show in this view is that if I just start over, I delete everything, is that one reason is for introducing system configuration is sometimes when you build these kind of solutions is that if you try to bake everything into the same constraint problem, you can run into performance issues. And one thing we want to address with this is, of course, it should be a smooth experience for the users, and don't put in too much stress on the performance if not needed. In this case, if I, for example, I can create a customer line. Of course, not all customers want the line I just add by one button. But if I create a line where I actually have 20 machines, and I tell the system to automatically configure those when I add them, you can see here that it will take me about 5 to 10 seconds to configure this. And what happens now is that I have a new line with about 140 configured complete machines with a bill of material with a new price of 24.6 million euros. What also happened in this was that, yes, I did have restrictions built in that you can't have more than 10 palletizers in your system. So once again, you get warnings, you get which you can utilize to stop the users from moving forward in the workflow. You can stop them from doing anything, but you can also let them not do anything with these kind of warnings. It's up to you. So it's a little bit more freedom, but the system helps both the administrator and the users to sell the right solutions. So now let's look at how this is working behind the scene and what we actually do when creating system models. Similar, we introduced a new system models in this page here in administration. I go into my flexible filling, and it's very similar to how you create a product model. We have global attributes, which are the attributes that I can put in values to, and they keep control of, is everything aligned within the system? Do I have the same voltage? We do have the nodes, which are my placeholders or my islands in the sea of machines or nodes. And each of these nodes does not necessarily have to be a complex configurable product. It can be a catalog of things that you just add. It can be one module variant where you just select from a list. For example, if you sell cars and you want to introduce and just have some spare wheels on a list, you can have it. You don't have to add it into the configuration problem if not necessary. But it can also, and this is important, have external communication where you actually can have a node who talks to a different system, even maybe a vendor configurator online, and picks the result and introduces it to your own solution creation. So a node can be many things. And if I add a node, just to show, it depends on how I define the node, what it will look like when I use it in my system. The last things are the connections. And connections define what node connects to what other node. And it's not a one-to-one, it's a many-to-many if you want to. And say, how do we convey information in the system? Other things that you can do is we can write rules. As I said, we can write actions. And we can design our own view. And here we also have a great flexibility. We have a very flexible left side menu where we want to keep, since there are complex setup on the systems, we want the user to have an easy way of knowing where in the system am I now and what am I addressing. And I can build up a very customized view for the end user. On top of that, it is compatible with visualization and costing and our other standard tools that we do have. That's all I'm planning to show for this demo. And I'm handing over back to Per.
Great stuff. Congratulations. Yeah, so it's important to point out here also that we've shown a demo with this production line. But of course, if you are selling systems, other kinds of system products with these nature of multiple interconnected subsystems or configurable products, system configuration could be really a game changer for you. So let me just, do you want to talk about these?
Yeah, well, you can go through it and I can.
No, but
yeah,
why don't
okay,
you?
so then I'll take it. So now, when we introduce this, how do you know as a customer when to use what? And there is no, it's hard to say exactly when to use what, but in general, if you can use our product modeling capabilities, that's the starting point to assume that you can solve the problems. But many solutions, even if you can define the problems, you many times don't know what the end result will look like. And that's a specific, for example, a production line. You don't know. You know you can add anything up from 1 to 1,000 machines, but you don't know how many. And of course, with this solution, you don't have to model some pseudo structure that you can have 1,000. If you want one more, you add one more. So that's a good hint that you can use this. Also, as mentioned, if you have a lot of want to introduce external communication to other systems when you configure, this might be the fit for you to go with. But there's no precise line. We do urge you, as I said, to start with the product modeling and expand to system if you feel the need or you feel limits with our current capability. And for all our existing customers, it is available a basic version if you have Enterprise or Enterprise Plus editions. So you can start trying parts of the system configuration out to see if it suits your need or if it can help you solve your problems. So that's some guidelines, but to know more, please talk to our sales engineers, consultants, etc., no matter what contact you have.
Great. So before we go into the questions, I just want to give some sort of hints for you. If you're a business owner of your CPQ system or your sales automation tools in your company, give some business value that we create with system configuration. So we've alluded to this already in the demo, but performance, of course, is one important factor here. So if you've tried to implement CPQ before and run into performance issues with that, system configuration could be a tool that allows you to address those challenges. So more scalable solutions. Also, as your products grow, then we have a good platform here for scalability. But also flexibility. If your system needs to, you need to add or change or move or relocate items in your network, this flexibility creates some great stuff and easiness in your configuration activities for your sales reps. But what are the business values? So of course we can decrease cost here, right? You can now leverage this technology to sell your complex system products instead of going with ETO for those kind of products. You can now use our modern configuration technologies. So you can basically sell different parts of your portfolio all within your configure to order framework. Of course, for those kind of products, you reduce the quote and order errors because we automate and we validate all the solutions that we create. And of course, you also minimize or reduce the time to value and the IT costs in implementing CPQ project now, because we have these tools available for your complex products. We also increase the revenue because, as we've said before, now you're able to actually offer a complete solution, a complete system to your product. So you will be offering a more holistic view of the things that you sell and offer to your in a one separate quote, and it's all interconnected. So this will increase the win rate by addressing the real and the whole solution space of your customer. And of course, for these kind of system products that we've talked about, we also leverage our CPQ for faster time to market. So you will be able to add your product data and your product constraints much faster and centralized into your CPQ tool that will be immediately available for your sales organization. But you also reduce the risk of CPQ implementation. Instead of making workarounds, we now have a standardized approach to address configuration problems, advanced configuration problems for systems. And of course, since this is a sort of a feature and saucified capabilities in our portfolio, when you subscribe to Tacton CPQ, this and all the improvements that will come automatically into your SaaS, directly into your SaaS environment for CPQ. So these are some great sort of values that we will see of system configuration, and that we have seen already for our pilot customers. Okay, so just to briefly round off here. So of course, there are some roles in your organization that will take advantage of this. Product managers, of course, but the modelers and the CPQ administrators also, they can easier and faster model system products. We avoid the performance issues, I said, and also the sales rep. This will be a completely different experience now, that they, instead of relying on engineer to order, they can now use modern configuration to order sales automation tools, which means that they can immediately answer inquiries from customers on site directly without having to rely on back office functions. So this is a great game changer also for the sales reps. Okay, I think we will stop there. Before we take some questions, you can, if you are a customer of ours already, you can contact your customer success manager. If you are a new customer of ours, please talk to your sales representative, or of course you can email me and I will forward your inquiries to the right person in the organization. Okay, so let's see if there are any questions here. Let's see. One question is, how can my technical team explore system configuration, learn more about it? Well, we have, as you know, in Tacton, we have an academy which educates our customers about our products. And in the fall, there will be courses around system configuration for you. So keep the lookout in our communication channels about courses around this, and take advantage of those in your package. Okay, here's a question. Can a priority be set to determine the recommended change when you have incompatible variables? I think that's a question for you. Bike example, color is not compatible with current selections if you change the frame size or the tire diameter.
And then the selected color.
Yeah.
Can you prioritize that frame size should be recommended by Tacton to be changed and not the tire diameter? There is not a conflict resolution the same way as in our constraint-based, and in this case, if you're on that level, probably it's the constraint-based that is solved. There is on the system level where it can help you to determine the right things, but not in the same way as the constraint solver helps you. So there is a difference, yes, between those two.
What is the difference between basic and extended version of system configuration?
More or less, what you see when it comes to designing the view, having the node, the sizing of the nodes and the global attributes, all is part of this basic or included version, what you get and is released yesterday. In the extended versions, you have three main things that are added. It's the ability to write your customized rules. There are still built-in rules which are respecting, for example, the quantities and the things that you set up. Also the ability to write actions, complex actions, then it's the extended version, and possibility to do external communication. So if you have need to talk to other systems or pull in other data to complete your system, then those are the big things that are not part of the basic.
And for those features, you need to buy the option.
Yes.
A dedicated option for system configuration. Can you share the presentation? I guess we will do so after the meeting. Anything else? Any word on the licensing cost for system configuration? Okay, I think this refers to the price of the option. And here we refer to contact your sales rep. They will let you know the price range for system configuration. Or if you have a customer success manager, talk to them. They will inform you about that. Okay, here's another question. Does system configuration address the functionality missing from product modeling that TCX modeling has? Mainly steps and instances. Maybe we should explain what TCX modeling is for
Yes, TCX modeling is our own. Even before product modeling, we had the built models in an offline tool called TC Studio, where you build your products or models, configuration models. And in that, you have the capability, for example, to have steps. And yes, you have steps in system configuration. You have instancing, since we actually are creating instances out of nothing. But once again, it's a lot depending on the use case of why the need of using those capabilities. Are they the exact same thing? No. There is a concept I should mention in this, which in system configuration of phasing, where you actually can sequentialize how things should happen in a specific order. But that's not visible to the user. It's something that you can set up. For example, this should be configured before I configured this. If there are, for example, values that you know needs to be set first before configuring second. But it's called phasing in system configuration.